Our interior product line all revolves around Oil Plus 2C. It's a two-component product, hence the 2C, and it's a hard wax oil. As our name implies, Rubio Monocoat, it is a single layer product. So you wipe it on, you wipe it off, and that gives you both the coloring if you want and the protection. It is linseed oil and carnauba and beeswax based. It's 100% solid. It is 0 VOC, and we have certificates to back that up. It comes in 40 standard colors, and you can intermix all of those colors. The color Pure is our non-pigmented or clear option. Be aware there's a color called Natural as well, which can be a little confusing to some people, but just know that Pure is the clear and the non-pigmented. So if you ever need to dilute a color, you will use Pure to do so. It is easy to apply. It is easy to maintain. It's very durable. It's water resistant when it's fully cured after 5 days. We test successful applications by allowing a quarter-sized bead of water to dry through evaporation. And if that dries successfully without any damage, then we consider that a successful application.
All right, so now we're going to jump right into application. With the application process, we're going to talk about preparation, which is extremely important for our product. Oil Plus 2C bonds to the wood through molecular bonding. So it's very important that you sand it properly, that you vacuum it properly, and that you don't leave any fine dust on the surface. The sanding grit that we suggest sanding last is 120 grit. You can go up to 180 if you needed to. And the reason you should not go over 180 is because the way the product works. It bonds to the wood through molecular bonding. If you go over 180, you're going to close the grain and the product's not going to bond properly. With the preparation, it's very important that you use the correct products to clean the wood, and we have a product for that.
Yeah, and real quick before we get into raw wood cleaner, I just want to elaborate. It's very similar to many other products, except for with the molecular bond, it's very critical in how open you're leaving the wood. So that's why we recommend again to 120 up to 180 grit. As Alan said, the more you sand beyond that, the more you're closing up those wood fibers and the less product is going to be able to penetrate. So what that affects is color. If you're using a pigment and you have the grain closed more and less product gets in, as a result, you have less pigment and consequently less intensity of the color. So if you're applying a dark color, it won't be quite as dark as you sand beyond 120. It won't be quite as light if you're using a light pigment. Another thing to be aware of is water popping. So by introducing water to the grain, you can open that back up. And yeah, you'll pop the fibers a little bit. And when you apply it, you can use a coarser pad. We'll talk about pads shortly. And that will help knock it down a little bit. But that's a way to get some extra product and consequently extra pigment in there as well through water popping the surface. So if you water pop, then you still want to clean it. And the reason we want to use this raw wood cleaner is to ensure that we get everything off of the surface. We want Oil Plus 2C bonding to the raw wood fibers on the piece, not dust sitting on the surface. If it bonds to the dust sitting on the surface, it can get tacky. It's not going to cure properly. So we highly recommend raw wood cleaner. And what you'll see is after sanding and after vacuuming, once you come back, so this was sanded to 120 grit, and vacuumed already. As Alan demonstrated, you'll be able to see some dust even wiping it, but it's actually pretty remarkable. You just get your rag slightly damp, and you're just gonna wipe this off. And again, this is kind of electrostatically grabbing all of the dust that's remaining on the surface. And I'll show you the bottom of the rag in just a second once I get everything off. And it always surprises me how much the vacuum leaves behind.
And one good point is the raw wood cleaner does not pop the grain like water does, So it does not pop the grain, and you're cleaning the wood, is removing all the fine dust, and you're also conditioning the wood at the same time.
Raw wood cleaner is our recommended product for that. We get asked a lot, hey, I don't have raw wood cleaner on hand. Can I just use like mineral spirits, for instance? We don't recommend mineral spirits because it will actually leave a residue on the surface. And what we don't want to do is leave anything on the surface that can hinder Oil Plus 2C from creating that molecular bond. So raw wood cleaner is our recommended product for cleaning off the surface in preparation for Oil Plus 2C's application. At this point, you're just going to let it dry. The wood will return to its natural color. It only takes
about an hour.
About an hour tops, and then we'll pick it up once it's dry. All right, so it's been about an hour. The raw wood cleaner is dry, and we are ready to proceed with the application. The first thing we'll discuss is mixing the product. Oil Plus 2C, again, is a two-component product. A little history on the name. It started out in 2000, I believe it was, as just oil. And then they came out with a new version and it was, oh, this is better. We'll call it Oil Plus. And then we iterated on it again and it became a 2-component. So it was Oil Plus 2-component or Oil Plus 2C. So that's a bit about the history on it.
So the product comes in different sizes, and the 1.3 liter comes with the accelerator, which is the catalyst.
Or we call it Part B. So the oil is Part A, and Part B is the accelerant and the hardener. We'll be mixing these at a ratio of 3:1. We have a couple different packagings. This 1.3 liter, which covers 600
square feet ballpark.
Square feet. This is our 390 mil size. That covers about 180 square feet as well. And these are prepackaged in ratios that are roughly 3:1. We also have our 130 mil, so 100 parts of the A and 30 mil of the B. And then we also sell some sample sizes that come in only the A component. We highly recommend to sample to know what the color is going to be. So prep your surface just like you're going to prep it for the finish application. Get some Part A, we have it in the 20 mil sizes, we have it in the 100 mil sizes, and then just wipe it on, wipe it off. We'll talk about the application, and that's gonna give you the truest look of color as opposed to just guessing, right? Because we have some resources printed on a digital screen. Most of the stuff we do is on white oak, it's sanded to 120. So all these little things affect the final result. So to get the truest color out of a sample, we just recommend, hey, grab some wood from the project, sand it how you will be sanding it, and apply it right on there.
Yeah, a good tool that we have on our website also, it shows all the colors in different species.
Yeah.
How many different species we have on our website?
I think we have 8 or 9 species now. So those are all on there. You can go through them, use that as a general reference to get close to what you want, but then still grab a sample just to make sure it's right there, because it's never fun to invest in something, invest in all the time and the effort to get it finished, although it's very quick and easy with Rubio, and not love the color because it's just an unfortunate circumstance for all parties involved.
So mixing ratio again, 3:1. It doesn't have to be exact, but 3:1 is a mixing ratio. You can use a syringe, you can use spoons, depending on the size of the project. So we have a 2x2 panel here. We know it's not going to be that amount that we need. This is going to cover a lot more.
Yep.
But a 3:1 is going to be a ballpark that we're going to mix here.
The first thing we want to do is shake it up really good. Shake it for a minute or so, and you just want to make sure all the pigment is really well suspended so that you have consistent color if you need to use the rest of the bottle later and you're not pouring it in. Same thing if you're doing a larger project and you have maybe you needed multiple cans to come together, mix those. It's always best practice to mix those together just to make sure that you get the most consistent color through that.
When you say mixing it together, you mean the Part A only. Yeah? Because once you mix the Part A and B, you have 5 to 6 hours to use the product. So mixing all the Part A's together, you're gonna have a consistent color.
So we're just gonna eyeball this. We do it a fair amount. So we have our 3:1 ratio down pretty well. You can measure it by volume or by weight. Again, the 3:1 is just a close approximately, get as close to it as you can, but it's not going to fail if you measure at 3.2 to 1 or something like that. So get as close to 3:1 as you can, shake it and make sure all the pigment's suspended. Then you're gonna mix the 2 components together. Quick note, when you are sampling, the Part B does not affect the color. So you do not need to use Part B and hassle with that, if you will, to get that sample done. Just add it to your final project and it will, again, not be different in color from that. And then, as Alan just did, stir it around and make sure that you have the Part B and the Part A fully intermixed. And then we're ready to proceed with the application.
All right, so now that we have the product mixed, it's time for the application. How the application process works, you're just gonna pour the product on the surface. How do you apply it? You can apply with a trowel, you can apply with the applicator pads, with a white pad and a red pad. The difference is the red pad is a little bit more aggressive than the white.
The red pad is just useful if you have more of a coarse or a porous surface. For instance, we talked about water popping before. So when you're applying the oil on a water pop surface, you might opt for the red pad because it's gonna help knock down some of that grain raise a little bit more. As far as timelines, you can see I applied it with the applicator trowel. When you do that, you still are going to have to come back with a white pad or a red pad and make sure everything's kind of spread out evenly and driven into the grain. So the idea here is just total saturation of everything. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this line here. On a traditional product, you would never do this. This would cause huge issues and you would see a lap line. With Rubio Monocoat's molecular bonding technology, This is totally fine to do, and we could leave it for 30 minutes, an hour. Don't leave it overnight because the moisture in the room can actually pop the grain a little bit, and then you would have a different color. But the product doesn't bond to itself, so this is not going to cause any lap lines. As we're applying it, the timeline is that molecular bond takes about 5 minutes to occur. Get it on there, make sure it's on there for at least 5 minutes, and I'm gonna pick up with the application while I'm talking. You'll see I'm gonna do it from the other side, and we'll kind of meet back in at the middle to show you that there won't be any lap lines. But it's 5 minutes for that molecular bonding, and then you're gonna remove all the excess within 30 minutes. On certain species, highly porous, thinking something like walnut, you might want to extend that 5 minutes, maybe even up to 15 minutes to allow the wood to fully accept all of the product. And during that time, just kind of work it in, make sure you're doing everything you can to drive as much product in, again, on highly porous and really thirsty wood species. Just kind of work it in, make sure that you want to fully saturate the surface. That's the goal. So we have this strip here in the middle. It's been a couple minutes that this is sitting here, and this is where I'll just wipe it on. At this point, you don't necessarily need to go with the grain. Contrary, I like to go against the grain and actually kind of make sure everything is fully driven into the soft grain. When you go against it, it's just a lot easier to drive it into the grain. So I'll do that, and then I'll lightly come back just to pick up as much of the product. Because Rubio Monocoat, we get it. People get sticker shock. It's expensive per volume, but when you realize that this can right here does 600 square feet, or this can right here does 180 square feet, it's actually right in line with industry standard costs. And then you factor in, hey, it's only one application, it's durable, it's easy to repair, and it becomes a really big, valuable product in your tool belt.
Time is money. You're doing the product in one coat,
Exactly.
It's saving a lot of time.
That's another thing about these white pads we didn't cover earlier, but the reason that they work so well is because they don't waste a lot of product. You could pour it on, you could smear it around with your hands, you could put it on with a terry cloth or a paper towel, but that's gonna absorb a lot of product, and we want product staying on the wood or in the can. We don't wanna throw it away at the end in our fire safe cans. So that's why we love these white applicator pads or the red applicator pads, because they really enable you to get the best yield out of the product and make it more cost effective. All right, so this has been on here for 5 minutes. The next step is to remove the excess. Again, you wanna make sure all the excess is removed within 30 minutes. If you go beyond the 30 minutes, it just starts to tack up and it's not as easy or pleasant to work with. So at this point, we're just kind of wiping. It doesn't necessarily matter if you go with the grain or against the grain, because Rubio Monocoat, it's not a build product. It is a surface layer and below, as opposed to polyurethanes and traditional film building products that get layered up plastic on top of the wood. So what this does is it helps keep the clarity of the wood. It has a really natural look and feel. The sheen of Oil Plus 2C is a matte sheen. So a really nice, even consistent look to the surface. And we have sheen enhancers if you do want to increase the sheen to a velvet or a satin. And we'll talk about those at the end when we're talking about supplementary products. But at this point, we just want to make sure you're really familiar with Oil Plus 2C. It's the flagship product for our interior. And so we're going to focus on that. And then we'll come back and teach you all of the creative things you can do to give really nice contrasting and complementary effects, increase the sheen, and all that fun stuff.
So as finalizing, the removing the excess, how do you know it's removed? If it's dry to touch, if you touch the surface, there's no oil on your fingers, you remove the excess.
One thing your customers might ask you that we've used to say was that you can never remove too much. When we went to our Green Guard Gold certified product, the viscosity was adjusted slightly to make it easier to work with. So now you don't have to worry about I gotta get scrub, and just keep going until you have a perfectly white cloth. So it makes it even easier to work with in that you don't need to try and get every last little thing off. Just dry to touch is fine. And at that point, you're good to go. So that is the application. It's that easy. Again, you wipe on the product, give it 5 minutes, take off all the excess within 30 minutes. A good sanding job is going to go a long ways. We're not covering it up with plastic and hiding poor sanding. So sand well if you leave little swirl marks and you're working with like dark pigmented colors, that pigment can collect inside the swirl marks and highlight them. So again, just good sanding goes a long way with Rubio Monocoat. And before we wrap up, it's important to know, and all of our cans say this on top, our product is an oil-based product and oil is combustible. So you want to be careful to make sure and dispose properly of it. Probably the safest way is to just get one of these oil waste cans and dispose of it within. We'll fill this up with some water and properly dispose of it in accordance with state and local regulations. If you don't have one of those, you can lay one out on the concrete floor, make sure it's dried out fully before you dispose of it. So hopefully this was very beneficial for you. We have our support team. You can reach us on our website. We'll email, we'll chat, we'll SMS, and we want to help you guys out. We want to help your customers out. So any way that we can support you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We would love to do that for you guys. Thanks so much for watching our interior Oil Plus 2C little tutorial.